I have Brian Myers and Smart Mark Sterling on the call with me right now. The Major Wrestling Figure Podcast is where you know them from. They're doing the official launch of the Major Pod Network. You can check it out now. The official grand opening is on February 1st, this Monday. How you guys doing today?
Good, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So I do want to get into all that, but first things first, Brian, you were viciously, savagely attacked on Impact Wrestling this week. Eddie Edwards bit you, drew some blood. It was, as you said, lawless and unprofessional. And you're going to be, Impact's going to hear from your lawyer. How you doing? Are you recovering?
Well, my left eye is, severely damaged.
I noticed you're sitting on it, so we can't see that.
Yeah, I'm looking,
Sensitive
for some kind of protective covering to wear.
Okay.
In the future, but I think Eddie Edwards is going to get what's coming to him. I kind of understand what's going on. The most professional wrestler taking on the most unprofessional wrestler. It's kind of a match made in wrestling heaven. So we'll see what comes of it.
Well, two things I took from that is you said you'll be hearing from my lawyer. Now we have Mark here. So is that, am I speculating too much? Are we going to see some silver intuition on Tuesday nights?
Mark, you want to get me your card?
Yeah, well, I am the most famous professional wrestling lawyer. So, me and Brian are friends. I'd love to help him out. So,
you
behind the scenes, whatever he needs, I'm here to help.
You didn't have the greatest luck on Wednesday nights,
right?
Maybe a big win on Tuesdays will put you back in.
He main evented. He main evented. I've main evented Impact. Mark has main evented AEW, and Matt Cardona is still looking for that main event. We'll get it one of these days.
And I will tell you this:
we're rooting for him.
We did everything we set out to do. That move was banned at that pay-per-view. I had to take a beating for it, but I get the job done. That's all that matters.
Okay. Now I do want to go back into the subject of being lawless and unprofessional. You Brian, consider yourself the most professional wrestler, but you're also a huge ECW fan. Why not fight fire with fire? Why not go at Eddie with all the stuff you grew up watching? Some of the stuff you talk about on your podcast.
I think it's more the principle of it. I need to. I'm more or less challenging Eddie to become his old self. To me, he was at once upon a time ago. He was a classy professional wrestler. Trained by Killer Kowalski. Boots and trunks and a nice clean haircut. Johnny Ace would have loved him if he was a little bit taller. In the early 2000s, but. And now look at him now, t-shirt wearing, he wears those little, they look like the shoes that Hornswoggle wore during his run, capri pants. I don't know what his hair is. Let's not even get into that. That's just too easy. So, I'm kind of challenging him. You know what? You're in the ring with the most professional wrestler. Like, let's start to act like it a little bit.
I see. It makes sense.
Fair enough. And I will say, if anybody's followed your career over the years, you were an edgehead, you were a party starter, you went through a winless streak, and now you're trying something different. You're trying to, be above it, so to speak. So I know when you left WWE, there was always that question of, are they going to tag, like you and Matt tag again, and both of you said, we want to do our own thing. So how do you has anything changed since then where, maybe you want to work with Matt in a singles feud? Maybe do you feel like you can do some work together where you're not teaming together, but you still have that on-screen presence that you bring to the figure podcasts and all that content, and make something really good out of it with Impact TV?
I mean, potentially. I mean, I don't think it's much of a secret that Matt and I don't, we were thrown together as a team when we were 18 years old, and we both had different visions and aspirations of what we would become in this business. And we've been very successful together. We're best friends. We have this podcast and podcast network now, and things are going very well for us, but we still have those aspirations, of two 18-year-old kids at wrestling school to get certain things accomplished. And I think that's where this all stems from. So right now, I have absolutely no interest in being a tag team with him. And I think he's in the same boat, because we're both just very determined on single-minded goals in professional wrestling.
I will apologize because I think I kind of went off and rambled for a little bit, but there was a question in there, and I was going to ask. You have this new direction for yourself. The most professional wrestler, he has his own thing going, but then the main place we're going to see you is FWF Thrill Zone versus Turmoil. I was talking to Mark about this before we started recording. I mean, how does all that stuff, as much as Zack Ryder and Matt Cardona is known for figure collecting, how do you feel like you can balance Brian Myers that we see on Impact right now with Brian Myers that fans know, like there's no veil with social media anymore. It's well known that, that's who you are. You guys still are friends. So how do you feel like you can kind of find that balance and keep moving in this new direction that you found for yourself on Tuesdays?
I think it's the competitive nature, amongst us. We're nuts and competitive in something as arbitrary as the FWF, and that's going to obviously spill over into the ring, if it comes to that. Because like I said, we never wanted to really be partners. It worked out and it was very successful, but we still have all these things we want to get done on our own. But also, me in the ring, me on Impact TV, it's just like any other, what I think super successful professional wrestler. It's just who you really are with the volume ramped up a bit. And that's basically what I have to do to be a successful pro wrestler. And I've accepted that, into my life and profession.
That leads me to my next question for Mark. And Brian touched on a really good point about playing yourself, but turned up a little bit. You left wrestling, went back to get your education. You have a major in fine arts, and you've really worked and done a great deal of work behind the scenes. How much thought goes into your character about using your education for an on-air character? Because we've seen the lawyer aspect, but is it's intellectual, intuition, figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
Where did the basis from what we've seen from your wrestling character, like where did that come from? Because I don't know if you would agree, but I see a little bit of Chris Nowinski, Alex Riley, like that Letterman's jacket.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I literally stopped wrestling in 2007 to go back to grad school. It was a very intensive program for 3 years, and then in that 3 years, fell out of it. Lost connections, moved to an area where I didn't have a ring to train in, things like that. But I had always said I would go back to pro wrestling. And then next thing I knew, it was 7 years later. So it was a very long layoff. I don't think many people do that. But when I went back in 2015, that's when I met Brian at Creative Pro. Literally had never met him in my entire life until the first day I trained with him. And, I didn't really know what my goals were, but I just wanted to be a good pro wrestler. So that's why I went to Cap. But eventually, when it came time to decide what I was going to portray myself as in professional wrestling, I wanted to do just what Brian said, turn yourself up. And the fact is, I did leave wrestling to get my education. So that's what I said. And that's what Smart Mark Sterling did as well. He left to get his education, and he is smarter than everybody. And also, I'm wearing a hat right now, if you're watching this, and, I have gray hair. So I knew that there was, I can't like walk out there and think that I'm going to be Batista because I don't look like Batista. So I feel like in pro wrestling, you have to be very self-aware, So with my hair, I needed it to either A, dye it, which I didn't want to do, B, shave it, which I didn't really want to do at the time, or C, use it. So, being distinguished, being smart, being a teacher, it all works with the look. So when I come out with gray hair, but that's my character, it all works. My gear meshes with it. My gimmick meshes with it. So yeah, I mean, it's very similar to Brian in our personalities, but the educational background was something I did want to build on.
And another way that you're probably prospering is you came back to wrestling almost at the perfect time. You see vlogs and behind the scenes stuff, like you have the background to do that yourself. Most guys have to learn how to do it, and they know the in-ring stuff and the promo, but you see guys like Ethan Page, Sammy Guevara. I think Brian, you had a Macon Town show for a little bit. So, you know, you don't have to wait that time to be self-taught. You have the background, and you're doing stuff for your individual wrestling career. You're doing stuff for the major brand. So, I mean,
Yeah,
did that make the transition back into wrestling easier? Was that something you also saw for yourself, like the behind the
wholeheartedly.
scenes stuff?
Yes, I mean, I say this to a lot of people. Uh, you know, I wouldn't have gotten nearly any of the opportunities that I got early on, especially even now, if I didn't have that sort of ability to create my character and do things on the internet via videos and audio and really produce things in that way. But also, it's helped me become valuable to promoters and to Brian. Really, I mean, I'm here right now in this interview because I came in day one at Creative Pro Wrestling and wanted to help out in any way that I could. And for some students, that's hang up flyers or build the ring. But for me, a brand new dad at the time, I was lending my hand to Creative Pro by helping them with marketing on Facebook, creating videos, making commercials for them. And in return, and Brian probably, I don't know if he knows this or not, but because I did that, he gave me good opportunities in Creative Pro. I mean, it's kind of like you become a value for the promoter, and that's how you create relationships in pro wrestling. And I did that with many promotions, and I don't feel bad I like that. That's how I sort of got things in pro wrestling and got opportunities. So it certainly was a value to me, big time.
And I don't think anybody would argue that if they've been following your work, it's not earned. So
thank you.
One of the other behind the scenes aspects I did want to talk about, another question for Brian, is you talked after your WWE release about doing work as a producer. Is that something you want to continue? Is that something you've talked about with Impact doing? Like what from that experience did you take from that and want to apply it, if you do, in the future, whether it's with Impact, whether it's the launch of this new podcast network?
I just love pro wrestling, A to Z. And one day, Father Time's going to get me, and I'm not going to be able to perform up to my standards in the ring. But to me, that's not going to be so much of a sad day. It's just going to be more of a transition because there's so many other jobs and aspects within this industry that I love and I'm interested in, whether that's commentary or being a producer, like you said, things like that. I don't even know, maybe creative after the FWF experience I just had. But Vince, I was injured and Vince handpicked me for this somewhat of an internship, and I did it. I always say I wound up working more injured than I did as a healthy talent, and I'm at every production meeting wearing a suit, listening, learning, and it was invaluable. It made me a better performer. I mean, some part of me was like, man, everyone should be in here because then we can deliver on exactly what you want. Like you're saying it in here, like that's fine. It's you just had a better understanding. So, I loved it. I enjoyed it. I mean, I was already kind of really doing it at my school to a degree. When Creative Pro would have live wrestling shows, I'm there. I'm not going to not help out or offer my 2 cents into situations and whatnot. So it's just it's just like anything else in this business. Like if you're passionate about it, it kind of bleeds over, and I love doing it. It's just something I don't want to do until I kind of physically have to, as much as I love it. And actually, even Impact has discussed it already, but both parties have decided to let me be me and
leave it for that. Leave that conversation for another day.
I literally didn't want to get stuck in it. When the day I got cleared, I went and found Vince. I'll never forget. I found him in the hallway, and I went, Vince, and I had this very honest conversation where I said that was an unbelievable experience, and I thank you for choosing me, and I'm very flattered, and I learned so much, and it was invaluable. But please let me be a pro wrestler. Is what I love to do. Like I am not ready to stop active competition at whatever I was, 32 years old. I thought that was nuts.
Right.
Fair enough. Well, we'll wait to see if you get to do that again. But in the meantime, you're back in the ring Tuesday nights, Impact Wrestling. I usually ask for a match recommendation. I'll pose the question to both of you. If fans are just learning about your respective careers, is there one match in particular you'd invite them to watch, or just one that you find inspiration from? Anything come to mind?
For me, I'm always like, I just feel like you're ever growing in pro wrestling. So to be like, oh, this match I had in 2007, it just, if I watched it back, I'd be cringing because I just feel like you got to be evolving and better and better and better. So my most recent favorite match I had was the Hard to Kill pre-show against Josh Alexander that you can
I think
very
it's free
easily
on YouTube,
find
right?
on Impact's YouTube, and I was very proud of it. You know, I actually wrestled Josh a ton before in Canada, and I was excited to do it on a bigger stage with him. And he's such a workhorse, and just it's fun to be in there with him. And I thought we both delivered. I think we over delivered. Personally, I feel like we stole the show before it even started, and it was fulfilling. So that's me now. I want people to invest in me now as a pro wrestler, not go back and watch my Edgehead run.
Well, I will say that the WrestleMania tag match was a great match, so you could also watch that to have a good time.
But like it's like in the past, man, I'm full steam ahead. But
and we have to plug Impact Plus.
Right
there you go.
I think for me, I mean, just I guess really, if you want to understand what my character is and what I'm doing in pro wrestling right now, you could see that Moxley match. But a regular pro wrestling match, I mean, I have a lot of matches on Beyond. Here's a fun one. Smart Mark Sterling versus Puff in a body slam challenge for Beyond Championship Wrestling. It's on the YouTube. It ends up being a 3-way. With Alex Reynolds is in it, and Danny Garcia is in it. He was just on NXT. It's a phenomenal, not a 3-way, a 6-man. It's a great match, super fun. I'm very proud of it. Check that out. VSK is in it. Awesome.
Since Mark tooted my horn, I'll toot his. He was in, I think, the most innovative pro wrestling match in the past 50 years. At Creative Pro, he did a gender reveal match.
Oh yeah,
which I think is the most unbelievably cool. I hope this takes off and people start contacting Creative Pro because we will provide this service for you.
Yeah.
But it was Mark Sterling against Chris Statlander, and obviously man versus woman, with the actual parents in the crowd with their friends and family, and nobody knows who's really winning this match until it happens. And obviously man or woman, boy or girl, with the child to be had. So think of the actual excitement involved in each false finish as that's going on. How real a roll up becomes. You know what I mean? So I always thought that was so cool.
For the brief period of time, me and Chris Statlander were the only people on planet Earth that, other than the doctor, that knew the gender of this baby until the finish happened, and then everybody erupted in surprise and delight. So
I like that. One more bonus question I'll pose to Mark or both of you. I know you do the off the Hop Rope podcast, and you just had, what was the beer? Rugged Coal Miner.
Yeah.
Any other beers you'd like to recommend?
Well, it's tough because we really dive into craft beer, and like craft inherently is really kind of based on your local area. So the beers that I like and enjoy are a lot like Massachusetts, New York area, and don't really get like sent out everywhere. Mm-hmm. But my favorite brewery is Treehouse in Massachusetts. It's widely known as one of the best breweries ever. So I would say if anybody's in the Massachusetts area, it's like Middle Mass, check that brewery out. You really can't go wrong with any of their beers. It is so good. I would even, if you're any kind of a beer fan, I would even make a trip of it if you could.
I've never had it, but I have friends that have done it. Like I'm in Philadelphia area, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're doing a Treehouse run," and I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you.
People wait online. They wait online outside.
Wait online. Right? I mean, now with COVID, it's easier. It's actually easier because you can wait in your car and order it online. But back in the day, man, you'd have to get there at 9. It opens at 11. You'd wait in line for an hour. There are hundreds of people in line. The beer would sell out sometimes, but it's very good.
That's when I go to 7-Eleven, get a 6-pack, and call it a day.
Right? Right. I was in Boston one time, and I went to Harpoon, and it was the same thing. There was like a line out the door for the growlers. I was like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Any picks for you, Brian?
I'm not really a beer
7-Eleven
guy.
6-pack guy.
But Mark has kind of expanded my horizons with beer and explained some things to me. And to be honest, and it started as just being a Mark, because we all are. The Stone Cold IPA,
Okay.
El Segundo. I just would get it because, like, oh, Stone Cold's beer, that's cool. But
Mhm.
it's actually like kind of a perfect IPA. It's like light and easy to drink, and I always have a couple. When I see them, I grab them. I always have a couple in my fridge. When people are over, I'm like, oh, you got to try it. I've never had a dissatisfied customer. I'll say that.
Yeah, I just started getting them in Pennsylvania, and I still want to try Chavo's beer. I haven't seen that out here yet.
Oh,
Oh, I
nice.
haven't even heard of that. That's cool. I didn't even know you had
It's
one.
I want to say it's more like a Tecate. It's not like a Corona,
I see.
Oh.
Cool.
but he has one. We did talk a lot about wrestling in and out of the ring, behind the scenes. The big day is Monday, February 1st, for the official grand opening of the Major Pod Network. What are you guys looking forward to the most? You got a lot of content on there, existing shows, new shows. What do you hope fans take from it?
Just have fun, man. I always think, like, I got involved in this because I fell in love with this stuff when I was 5 years old, and I just never, ever, ever, no matter what, want to lose that, like, kind of boyhood wonder about pro wrestling. And doing this has really just kept that alive and made it just so much goddamn fun to be a part of. And at the end of the day, I
Mhm.
think that's all that matters. I mean, if you're enjoying something, and it's our job now, which is crazy to say, but it's almost like I've never worked a day in my life, especially doing
Mm.
this. So above all, I want people to just enjoy it and have fun and smile and relax, and take a load off and just enjoy, grown men talking about fond memories with toys. There's nothing but just good times to be had with that. And now we're expanding with so much more, like you said, off the hop rope. And I think Matt's podcast about Z-Trolline story is going to just really open a lot of wrestling fans' ears, maybe people that don't care about collectibles and stuff as much. And then same with mine, the ECW, a deep dive in ECW. There's so many of these ECW fans that are so diehard and loyal, and they're just clamoring for something. This awesome product just disappeared almost out of thin air in 2001 and just hasn't felt right since. And now at least we can all maybe cope together and hear some stories about that. It's nothing but good stuff.
Mm. Yeah, I will say that as you're listening to this now, the feeds for Matt's podcast are already available. You can subscribe there, and Brian's Extreme Conversations. The pilot episode is available. It's about an hour and a half. It's actually me and Brian. We sit down with Francine and Steve Carino and Nova and Justin Credible, and we talk about Heat Wave 2000. So that's available right now, and the plan is we're going to drop 5 or 6 more episodes for season 1. It's going to be bingeable, and that's going to happen probably Q1 of 2021. Matt and I, that podcast will launch on the 17th, February 17th. I'm very excited for that. As a fan, I have this memory, and I think a lot of wrestling fans, if you're listening to this and you're a wrestling fan, a lot of fans remember that moment where they sort of figured out or found out about Z-True Long Island story. And I was, 2011. So I moved to New York to go to grad school, and I was driving back home to Massachusetts. It was a long trip, 3.5 hours, and I wasn't driving. My wife was driving, and somebody said something. You got to check this YouTube video out. And I think he was 16 episodes in, and I binged all 16 episodes and became an instant fan. And I will never forget driving on 91, watching these episodes, and was a huge fan of his. I was at Madison Square Garden at the end of the year for the show, the We Want Rioter show. So it was a big
it's a story that needs to be told.
Yeah, I was a huge part of that whole journey as a fan. I had so many questions back then, and now we're 10 years to the day, coming up on the February 17th, 10 years to the day since he launched his first episode. And when you think about this, right? 10 years to the date, first episode launches. The next episode that we will have will also be 10 years to the date of that episode. So every time we come up with a new episode, it'll be exactly 10 years later, which is super fun. And I Brian said this in a private chat. Mark's got to get the juice out of Broski or push him a little bit. We think he might try to be a little safe with some of his answers, but
I just read the Young Bucks book, and I read every wrestling book, but this is like a modern tale of pro wrestling that was just awesome to hear and had to be told and understand, like what guys of our generation have gone through. And I think Broski's story is equally as groundbreaking as the Young Bucks' rise to fame.
Yeah,
it's just in a different space and a different, completely different story, but equally groundbreaking and important to our generation of pro wrestlers, and someone who really, at the end of the day, made a huge difference. And sadly, the Young Bucks are incredible, they're awesome, but they kind of get all the credit for what they did, and Broski doesn't seem to really get the credit for what he did in this space, and I think hopefully this is therapeutic for him and everybody, and and everyone can hear the story and really understand.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be like a deep dive into the year of 2011 in pro wrestling, seen through the eyes of a man that started at nothing and ended at the top merch seller in the WWE. So,
well, that's in the middle, Mark. It kind of ends with nothing too. So
yeah, you're right. Okay. Rises to that and then falls back.
Stay
down.
tuned.
Okay.
Yeah. It ends with the wheelchair going off the stage.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for all you did for us.
Well, I think there's probably like 50 more episodes after that.
Yeah.
Nah, so then weird things start happening. He tries to grab back onto that. There's a lot to dive into. And there's some emails he might read.
He basically starts with already in the ring, Zack Ryder, to maybe one of the biggest stars in the company, to already in the ring, Zack Ryder, when it's all said and done 2 years later.
Insane.
Pretty wild.
Yeah.
Insane.
I all the points that you mentioned, I'm looking forward to it. I think people that wanted him to go back to it are going to be excited for it.
Yeah.
And then, peeling back the layers a little bit, as far as looking at it in hindsight, that's going to be interesting. And I did want to note that's February 17th. That's going to launch. And then the other two shows that make up the lineup are the Game Marks podcast and then FWF you have on there. So you guys want to check out anything that's going on, it's at Major Pod Network on Twitter. Mark Sterling, Brian Myers, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for having us, man. Check us out, please. We're like I said, we're bringing fun to the wrestling business, because that's what it should be.